Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Module 52, which corresponds to our topic 3.2 about marginal revenue, marginal cost, and profit. And there's a couple of concepts in this topic that are actually really helpful for us that weren't fully addressed in the actual lecture videos. So I'm really glad that you've decided to take a look at these problems. So let's get started. The first problem says Karma and Don run a furniture refinishing business from their home. Which of the following represents an explicit cost and which represents an implicit cost? And so remembering kind of the difference between those two, explicit is something exiting from your wallet. It's where you're spending money on it. Implicit is what you gave up. It's implied. It's not something that you wrote a check for, but it's something that you gave up in order to do something, related to the idea of the opportunity cost. So supplies of things that we have to spend money on, that's explicit. Basement space that's been converted into a workroom, that's actually an implicit cost, because thinking about like what we could have been doing with that basement space, it was already there and we could maybe be renting it out, or we could be using it for storage or do something else with it. And so we're not actually spending money on that part. Wages paid to a part-time helper, though, we are spending money. We'd say that's explicit. A van that you inherited and use only for transporting furniture, well, that's an implicit cost. Again, what else would you be doing with that van? You didn't spend money on the van, so that's why we wouldn't say it's an explicit cost. In this case, you're using the van in order to do your business. What else might you be doing with it? Maybe you could sell it, maybe you could use it, that kind of stuff. Uber. The van or the job at a larger furniture restorer that Karma gave up in order to run the business, also an implicit cost. It's the implicit cost of your labor. And so students often forget you've got the implicit cost of the equipment that you're using, but also the implicit cost of your time, the labor that you're putting in. You could be doing something else with. And so to really calculate economic profit, we have to consider both the implicit cost of capital and the implicit cost of labor. So suppose that you're in a business earning an accounting profit of $25,000. The implicit cost of your capital is $2,000, and the opportunity cost of your time is 23. And so when they're saying the opportunity cost of your time, that's just the implicit cost of your time. If we're asked to calculate economic profit, we can actually start with the accounting profit, which is 25,000, and then we subtract our implicit costs. And we know that our implicit costs are 2 and 23, so that's 25. And so we'd say 0 economic profit. So that's what we also call normal economic profit. Yes, we should continue, so long as we don't basically have something else coming up, in essence, like something else that we could be doing more with our time, in which case our economic profit would be negative. And so then we would want to switch away. We should always keep continuing so long as basically economic profit is 0 or larger than 0. And it is considered to be normal to have an economic profit of 0, because if there were a positive economic profit, other people would actually take advantage of that, enter that market, and they would basically slice up that market and capture some of that extra profit that you might be earning, reducing your economic profit down to 0 and their economic profit down to 0. It's a little bit of a conceptually difficult idea. We're going to talk more about it in Unit 4 and kind of show you why we call it normal economic profit to have 0. It is useful to kind of recognize here that normal does not mean that your business isn't earning money. The accounting profit is positive. So from your bank statement's perspective, you're making actual profit. You could distribute that to shareholders. You could spend that for holiday gifts or whatever you want to do. But from an economic standpoint, which includes your implicit costs, we would say it's normal to actually have 0 economic profit. Now let's take a look at this last problem. Sunny owns and operates a snow cone stand. Excuse me. Calculate Sunny's snow cone stand's total revenue for January, their accounting profit, and then what else we might need to know to determine whether to stay in business. So the snow cone total revenue we just know is price times quantity. And so we've got 2 times 2,000 times 2,000 equals $4,000. And so that's our total revenue. Then part B says calculate their accounting profit. Well, we need to know what the explicit cost is and the depreciation. These two both go into the accounting profit, and this one goes into the economic profit, and we'll kind of come back to that in just a second. So the explicit cost is the idea of the things that basically Sunny spent money on to run the business. Depreciation is a concept that was discussed a little bit in the reading, and it's possible you'll see questions about it. It basically means if you have, say, a very large fixed cost, say a roof for your factory, or you know that you're going to have to repave the parking lot after 5 to 10 years or something like that, something where it's a big cost, but it doesn't happen every single year. What accountants will often do is they'll take the full amount of that cost, like the new $10 million roof that has to go on your factory. And over the course of the 10-year lifespan of that roof, they'll say, we're going to depreciate, that is to say, kind of reduce the value of that roof by $1 million, because we know at the end of the 10 years, you're going to have to spend 10 million to replace the roof. So budgeting as you go along, we're going to say set aside $1 million this year for depreciation. And it's basically allows you at the end of that time period, whenever you need to replace that big fixed expense, you can do it because you've set aside money as you go along. That's how you can kind of smooth out the explicit costs. And so depreciation isn't necessarily that year that money is being spent, but it's more like we're taking that money and socking it away because we know we're going to have a big explicit cost at some point in the future when we replace the roof or replace the machine or something like that. So depreciation is included by accountants, even though it's not actually writing a check at the given moment. It will eventually, just not maybe that particular year. So we have our total $4,000 in revenue. We subtract our $500, and so our total revenue minus our explicit and depreciation, right, should give us our accounting profit. And what that amounts to being is 4,000 minus 500. And so we have $3,500 in accounting profit. Now, part C says, what else do we need to know to determine whether to stay in business? And we need to know the economic profit. And what do we need to determine for that? We need the implicit cost of capital, which we have given, right? We know that, and that's 200, but we also need the implicit cost of Sonny's time. Sonny's time. In other words, what else would Sonny be doing if they weren't running the snow cone stand? We need to know that to determine whether actually Sonny should stay in business. After all, maybe, you know, we've got this $200 that's the implicit cost of capital, so we could say 3,500 minus 200. Well, that leaves us 3,300. But if Sonny had a job, Sonny had an alternate job paying, I don't know, let's say 4,000. Well, if Sonny had an alternate job, let me move that just a little bit here, paying $4,000, then that would well outweigh the amount of economic profit that still remains to be here. And this 200 was the implicit cost of capital. So we have to know what Sonny might be earning, what their implicit cost of their time would be in order to truly do this problem. All right, so let's take a look at the multiple choice questions with this topic: marginal revenue, marginal cost, and profit. Again, module 52. So which of the following is an example of an implicit cost of going out for lunch? So the amount of the tip, no, that's the explicit cost because we have to spend that. The total bill you charge, explicit. The cost of gas to drive, explicit. The value of the time, that's the implicit cost. It's what you would have been doing had you not gone to lunch. 2, which of the following is an implicit cost of attending college? Tuition, no, that's explicit. Cost, no, that's explicit. Laptop, explicit. Lab fees, explicit. Foregone salary. So we have D, E, and then accounting profit equals total revenue minus depreciation and total explicit cost. That's all they care about, right? Explicit. And the depreciation, which you'll probably see a couple of questions that just kind of include that word. Not much you're going to have to do with it. Which of the following is considered when calculating economic profit? So that one's A. But not accounting profit. And so this one is a little strange because like all of the things actually that you use to calculate economic profit, you would kind of need, but for implicit cost, right? So implicit cost is the only thing that basically these folks are going to care about, but not those folks. And so we'd say implicit cost is the only one. You sell t-shirts at your school's football games. Each shirt costs $5, sells for 10. Each game lasts 2 hours, and you sell 100 shirts a game. You could be earning 8 an hour. Your accounting profit from selling shirts at the game is what? And so we know that we're just looking for the accounting, so we're not going to care about your alternate job. We're just going to say, like, what's our total revenue minus our explicit cost? So our total revenue is, we have to think about, they sell for 10, so $10. So we're doing total revenue first. That's price times the quantity. And we sell 100 shirts per game, so that's 100. And so our total revenue ends up being $1,000. And then our explicit cost, right? Explicit cost is that the shirt costs $5 to make. We know that the game lasts 2 hours, but that doesn't really matter for our purposes. The shirts, we have $5 per unit times 100 units for 500. And so we'd say that your accounting profit is 500. Right? And then the second part of this question is going to be the economic profit. And that part, we do need to know that the game lasts 2 hours and we could be earning 8 an hour at the other job. So if the game's 2 hours, 2 hours times $8, that's 16. And so our economic profit would be whatever this 500 is minus the 16 is $484. So our correct answer, I'll move that just up a little bit here, is 500 for the accounting and economic profit of 484, C. Hopefully this helped you. I'll see you next time.